Alright, we're getting ready to solder up our first schematic board here. And I heated up my soldering iron and it's looking pretty rough. It's probably not going to work too well. So what I want to do quick is show you a few techniques on how to get your soldering iron in good working order so that you get good performance out of it. This tip is pretty dirty, it's pretty gross. It's got some old solder on it. What you need to do is just get a nice damp, like old bath cloth or kitchen towel or whatever, and just dampen it up a little bit. Once your iron's really hot, just take and pull down on it, and I think you can see it got a little bit shinier already. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of that solder, okay, and as that iron's nice and hot, we're just going to run a bunch of solder on this. Let it melt on there. That's called tinning. That's going to condition your solder tip, or iron tip. And you just want to push that on there and then clean it right off again. And there we've got a nice, clean, shiny soldering iron. You can do this a couple of times. You'll notice too that as you do this, your iron works pretty good. Just blob a bunch on there. And remember, we're working with an iron, so be extremely careful that you don't burn yourself. I have experienced a couple of good burns and they're not fun. So when you've got the iron around, please be very careful. Okay, we've got a good iron. We're going to do this technique probably off camera, but know that it's happening a couple of times. I'll probably, if I remember, mention it while we're wiring up. So what we're going to do here is get some solder, that real thin stuff. You can get this at hardware stores, Radio Shack, anywhere. I use the real thin stuff because it gives you more control. You're going to need more of it, but especially for beginners on wiring, if you use a lot of solder, it makes a mess really fast. So if you get the really thin stuff, you get better control. Okay? So what we have here is basically your Eddie Van Halen setup. Eddie only used one pickup, one volume knob, and an output jack or an input jack. So what we have here is, and I want to explain this, we've got a mock-up pickup wire with the ground, which is bare, and the hot coming out of the center. We've got a ground wire here, which typically goes towards the bridge. Okay? So we've got the wiring coming in. Now we've got a 500K potentiometer. You can use these in a tone aspect or in a volume. It all depends on how you wire them up. Okay? So typically, being that this is ground and it's just a bare wire, the back of the pot is actually your ground. Okay? Now, you've got 3 poles down here. Ground, you're going to solder this one right to the ground and call that ground also. What that's going to do is, as you turn the knob, it's going to taper off and kill the signal. Then over here you've got your input. That's where you're going to put the hot for the pickup. And then you've got your output, which is going to go to the input jack. Now, on the input jack, let's just kind of zoom up on this a little bit. And I hope you can see this. You've got your hot right here, which comes down and underneath some insulation. You then have this piece, which is your hot, coming around underneath the insulation. You have your ground right here, which is connected right to the hole here, and that's what's going to give you your connection to your cable out to your amp. Okay, so knowing that now this is hot and connected to the hot here, which goes to the tip of your cord, and that this is ground, what we need to do is start hooking this up. We're going to hook the pickup into here and the ground to here. We're going to hook the output to the hot, and then ground to ground. So let's get this going. I just kind of want to mock the wire up. And you want to basically do this wiring before you go to hook up the pickup. If you've got pickup wires and everything in there, it gets in the way, so do your basic wiring first, hook the pickup up last. So as I stated, we're going to use white wire for hot, and we're going to use black for ground. And I do this on all my wiring. That way, once I get things mocked up, I know exactly what it's going, where it's going, what it's doing, and then before I solder it, I can actually check the wiring over and make sure that I have things connected properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide this right into the hole here. And please bear with me a little bit. I'm doing this for your benefit, so it's kind of a little bit awkward for me at this point. Okay, so I'm just going to bend that over. It's loose, but it's on the pole. And that is my hot out. So I need to go to the hot on the input jack. Okay, so we'll put this in here like this. And I'll take the screwdriver, just kind of fold it up and over. Once I got it to that point, well, okay, so now, I'm sorry about the movement. Like I say, I'm just trying to get this thing all ready to go. So now we've got the hot and the hot from the output to the input jack. I'm going to grab myself a little stick of solder here, like so. And then I'm just going to make sure that that tip's clean on that rag real quick. Okay, now let's put this together. When soldering, you don't want to heat up the wire, you want to heat up the component and the wire together. So we're just going to lay this here and give it a couple of seconds to heat up. And then apply the solder. And I usually blow on it a little bit, and you'll see it'll change color a little bit as it cools, and you'll be able to tell that it's made a good connection. Now let's go up here and let's do this one right away. Again, heat up the component and the wire together, and apply your solder. Blow it on, and let's just see how our connection is. And all you want to do is just kind of tug on it and make sure that everything's there. Okay? So we got a good connection there. Now what we need to do is start working on our ground. We have our hot out into our input jack where we're going to plug in. So that's taken care of. Now let's get some black wire. Now, just while I have this here, I'm going to slide this over. I've got a piece of black wire, and what I want to do is I want to just shave this off. Now I had the white one already ready to go, but you want to just take your X-Acto knife like this and then just twist the wire a little bit, push down gently, take a fingernail and strip it. Once you've got it stripped, you want to twirl them together, and then let's do the other side. X-Acto knife works really good if you've got a good quality wire. And like I say, StewMac, you'll get a good quality wire. Strip it. Twist it. Okay, so that's our wire all ready to go. Let's get the board back into view here. And let's mock this up real quick. We've got the ground right here. And then the ground is the back of the potentiometer. So let's get this in here. Fold it up and over. So that's not falling off. Now just to get this somewhat secure, let's just solder that right away. Again, make sure your iron's clean. I just rubbed it on that rag again, that damp cloth. Got a nice stick of solder here. And remember, heat up the component and the wire together. And apply your solder. That one moved around on me a little bit, so I'm going to blow on it to cool it off, and I just want to make sure we've got a good solid connection. And we do. Alright, so for the ground now, we've got to go against the back of the potentiometer, and we've got the one from the bridge, and we've got the one from the input jack. What we can do is twist these two together. And solder them on there all together. That'll give you a better ground. It's better to have that than 4 or 5 different spots all connected, different spots. I always like to try and keep my grounds together. If you pick up a guitar and you hear like a humming or a hissing through it, usually it's a good telltale sign that you have a ground issue. So when wiring up your own guitar, make sure that your grounds are secured very well and soldered very well. Alright, so this actually has to go to the back of the potentiometer. This might be a little challenging for me because the board's been moving around, and I apologize for that, but what I want to do is heat up the wire and the component. This might take a little bit. You don't ever want to overheat your components either, because you can destroy them. You have problems with it. Solder's been taken to the wire, that's okay. And then to the component. Now here's where the screwdriver or your friend comes in. There we go. See, this can be a little challenging, especially on this board. It's messing with me. Heat it back up. Take your screwdriver, hold it there, and then blow on it. There we go. Again, I apologize. It's kind of difficult for me. Usually you got a guitar there, so nothing's moving, but it's going to be hard for me to show you inside of a guitar cavity what's actually going on. That's why I made these boards up. I got a couple more I'm going to show you too. So now you've got your ground circuit to the pot. You've got the ground circuit to the bridge. Technically, we're wired for sound here. You've got the hot out into the input jack, and your ground circuit's complete. All we have left to do on this is get the pickup in. Now remember, we discussed this being the ground and the center wire being the hot. So the hot has to go on the input pole of the potentiometer, and this has to go to ground. So let's mock this up real quick. And again, just fold this around. If you get a little too much wire too, you can always just take a wire cutter and just sort of clip it off. But you want to make sure that you wrap it around before you solder it. Like so. Now that one got a little sloppy. We'll throw a little extra solder on there and all will be fine. The cleaner you can do this, the more reliable it's going to be. If you get to a point where you have like a couple of strands of wire sticking completely out and not really contacting, you're going to want to go pull that back off and redo it, because that could give you just some static or some, just a loose hot wire somewhere around there could just give you problems. So make sure that when you twist these all up, pull it around the pole, that it's very clean and that you fill it full of solder. So let's get that hot on there. Again, I'm just going to wipe that soldering iron off. Let's secure this so we can see what's happening. Again, I apologize for the movement. I'm just trying to do this for the first time to show. Heat the component and the wire. You'll find that your solder will just start to flow. Blow on it to cool it off, and then let's just pull on that and check and make sure that it's on there good. Excellent. Last one. We got to get that ground down, and I am going to just take my cutter and trim this off. I didn't know how much I was going to need, so let's just trim that back a little bit, and then we will heat that up right there. Now when it comes to components such as this, make sure that you don't get too close to the hot. You don't want to burn the insulation on here, because if you burn the insulation and it touches the ground wire at all, you're going to have problems of sound, and you're going to probably have a wicked buzz coming out from your ground and your hot colliding. Okay, so we're going to lay that right on the wire. We're going to try and get that soldering iron on the wire and on the back of the potentiometer. We get our solder ready to go. Okay, I'm going to grab that screwdriver, blow on it, and there we go. Okay, let's just quick review this here. Now, you've got one pickup, one volume knob, and an input jack, and then the ground up here is basically your guitar bridge. What we've done here is, let's just follow this and make sure we've hooked it up right. Let's start with the ground and make sure that the ground circuit's good. So we've got ground to bridge, which goes to the back of the potentiometer, and then also to the ground on the input jack. That looks good, everything's solid, we've got clean solders, should work just fine. Okay, now we've got the center pole piece, which is your hot out from your volume knob to the hot here. We've also got our pickup hot in put on here, and then the ground. I just noticed something I forgot. I didn't solder this. So let's go and put some solder on this. That would not work. So let's just go ahead and solder that real quick, and that'll finish it up. Just like on previous projects, I'm trying to teach you something, I make a fool out of myself. So here, let's just solder this up. Okay. Heat up the component again. And see, this is why you always want to double check. Here I am thinking I'm all done, this should work perfect, and I forgot to solder the ground on the potentiometer here. It's giving me a little bit of a hard time here. It's just not sticking. Push that in a little bit more, see if we can get better contact. There we go. And again, my soldering iron's kind of acting a little funny and I'm not getting it good, so I'm going to clean that off real quick. We'll try this again. You always got to kind of be patient with this stuff. It is kind of small, and once you get inside the cavity of the guitar, it makes it even more difficult. So, first few times out, be patient. There we go. Sorry for the inconvenience there, but there is basic one pickup, one volume knob to an input jack. Van Halen's classic setup for just a single pickup. Kramer Berettas, Strikers, all those 80s one pickup guitars, that is your basic wiring for it. And as you can see, it wasn't very difficult. I did have a little bit of problem with the soldering iron. I forgot to do one. These things happen. That's why you always want to go and double check your wiring after, because the last thing you want to do is go plug this thing in thinking you're ready to rock and roll and play your favorite band's tunes or go out and write some stuff and you're having problems with your wiring. So I'm going to get this board out of the way, and I'm going to bring another board in, and we're going to take this basic setup and we're going to add a tone potentiometer to it so that you can change the tone and give you a little bit more versatility in your sound. So give me a second and I'll get that all set up.